Hey everybody, I'm Chaos Gaming. Welcome back to another video. And first off, I just want to say thank you for clicking on the clip, and I hope you guys enjoyed the clip. It's I found it to be pretty good. But another thing is just like a quick announcement. I am going to start a community on PlayStation. So if you guys would like to join the community, it's just going to be I'm Chaos Gaming YT. Just yeah, you come and you can just hang out, you can talk, and maybe I'll even play a couple games with everybody. Alright, thank you, bye. What's the
In
name?
Bed with the Hero of Hyrule. Chapter 1. In Bed. When you moved in, you had no idea this would happen. You didn't even want to move to Ordon at first. You thought life in Castletown was boring as it was. However, both you and your brother fit in with what the other villagers within the first month. Who knew they could be so interesting? His name was Link. You knew you've heard that name before. He was that hero of Hyrule that everyone in Castletown talked about so often. You didn't understand why such a big and important young man chose to stay in such a little humble little village instead of dwelling in the luxury of the Hyrule Castle with the beautiful Princess Zelda. But you were glad he was in Ordon, back in the compound where you used to live. Handsome Hylian boys would come by sometimes. You and your friends delighted in it, ogling them at them, and debating on whether they were cute enough or not. But you had to admit that Link was on a whole other level. The girls mentioned him a couple times, but you had no clue he was this attractive. About a week after he helped you get settled into the village, you took it upon yourself to ask Lilla whether or not Link was available. She was the only other girl around his age in that entire village, and from what you could tell, they'd been very close since they were children. You felt relieved when she snorted at your question, seemingly disgusted that you'd think of their relationship that way. She told you she'd come to see Link as a brother. This interest of yours in Link's personal affairs caused some speculation on Lilla's part. She wasted no time in informing Link, teasing him and prodding him for his opinion on you. He was quite pleased. He revealed precious little to Lilla and decided to pay you a little visit that evening. You heard a male voice call out from the outside of the bedroom window. Curious, you rubbed the sleep out of your eyes and peered out of it. Leaning on the wall of the cottage was none other than the hero of Hyrule himself. Link? What are you doing here? Do you know what time it is? You asked, cupping a hand over your mouth when you yawned. He grinned. I know, I'm sorry. It's just, I got off work, and I wanted to drop by before heading home. I heard something interesting, and I thought you'd want to talk about it. You glanced at your brother momentarily to confirm his sleep was undisturbed. Sighing, you gestured him to the front porch. Fine, but only because I owe you one for helping us out the other day. Link was already at the door, and when you opened it, letting himself in when you ducked into the kitchen to get some water, he set a glass on the table where he sat at, looking at him expectantly with a hand on your hip. He cleared his throat. So I heard that you've been asking around about me. You felt blood rush to your face. Why had you expected Lilla to keep quiet? Biting your lip, you pulled out a chair and sat across the table. This is going to be a long night. You moaned. He was everywhere. One moment his hands were pinning yours on down into the bed. Next thing you knew, they were traveling up your nightgown, quickly speeding into no man's land. You could feel his manhood pressing against you from where he was between your legs. Oh, Hylia, how'd you get here? Oh, right. He made you admit that you found him incredibly attractive. He smirked. And you could sense there's something else there. He was so charming, oh so charming. One thing led to another, and the next thing you knew, you were making secret nightly appointments with the hero of Hyrule, under the sheets no less. You were pulled back into the moment when you felt his fingers brush over you in your underwear. Link looked down at you with his half-lidded eyes, wearing that same smirk you'd seen earlier in your house. You cursed at yourself mentally. He could tell you were already getting excited. He leaned in again and kissed you before slipping his hand into your underwear gently, repeatedly working his skillful fingers onto your clitoris. This made you open your mouth into the kiss, which evidently was what he wanted. Forcing his tongue inside, it was your first time to be with a boy like this. Truth be told, you were a little shy about it. You hadn't expected to lose your virginity to someone you barely knew, but goddess, oh goddess, it felt so good. And his eyes were so blue, everything seemed so right. He felt your legs move a little farther apart and took it as a sign to experimentally push a finger into your opening. You gasped at as he began to thrust in and out, putting in a second finger. When you begged him for more, he watched you moan and squirm from under him, from his touch. Your voice calling his name was the sweetest thing he'd ever heard. And oh, that look on your pretty face turned him on like no other. He moved his hand to cup one over your breasts, over your nightgown. He thought he could last longer, thought he could savor the foreplay, but Link was getting impatient. He moved his fingers up and grazed something heavenly inside of you, and from your melodious screams, he could tell he was making you feel something you'd never felt before. A few seconds in and wonderful sensation stopped, you realized he pulled his hand away and was simply looking at you. You could still feel his erection pressing against you. A little annoyed, you bit your lip. Hey, why'd you stop? Damn it, that smirk again. I want to see. You paused, contemplating what Link had just said. Well, what do you want? What do you want to see? He moved his hand to your head, running his fingertips down from your forehead over your nose, your lips, down to your chin, your neck, in between your breasts. He stopped somewhere near your stomach and you realized what he was doing. He was unbuttoning your nightgown. You closed your eyes and waited for him to undo the final button, pushing the cloth away from your chest to expose you. You were blushing a bright red. No one in the kingdom had ever seen you like this. You looked at him from the corner of your eyes and felt him get harder as he moved down to kiss you again, trailing his kisses to your neck softly until his mouth was on the mound of your breast. You sighed, panted, pushing yourself into him while he grabbed at your nightgown until he successfully torn it off you, and there it lay. On the wooden floorboards on his bedroom. You were so wet. You were so wet. Instinctively, grabbing up the waist of his pants, running your hands up under his shirt to feel his body. He was so warm. He was so warm and you wanted him so badly. Link licked over your nipple and forced himself up, shedding his shirt, in the process hastily dumping his pants along with it. You studied him briefly, realizing you were aching for him. He grinned. What's the matter? Like what you see? You shot him a look and sat up, wrapping your arms around his neck and kissing him again as you pulled him back into bed. Gasping for air, after a few minutes you smiled. Won't you please shut up and do me? Yes, ma'am, was all you heard before he grabbed at your panties, tugged them off your legs, and positioned himself by your opening. You hadn't realized you were holding your breath and he had to laugh. Wait, are you nervous? Your eyes fluttered open and you looked at him with the furrowed eyebrows. What are you talking about? Oh, of course I'm nervous. Well, look at the size of the thing. I told you, this is my first time too. Link seemed to think for a bit before he smiled down at you. It wasn't a smirk. No, sir. This time was a genuine smile, warm and assuring. Somehow, that made you blush even more. God, he was cute. He leaned into you and you could feel his lips against your ear as he whispered, I'll be gentle. You forced your eyes shut again, swallowing as you felt his tip enter you. He pushed himself further slowly, hearing you moan as he did. Strange. It didn't hurt the way they told you, but there were tears forming in your eyes. They did not go unnoticed, and you brushed his thumb against your lip and wiped them away. Concerned, he tilted his head slightly and studied the expression on your face. Are you okay? You opened your eyes to meet with his ever-enchanting sapphire ones, giggling a little bit before you said, Yes, I'm fine, Link, but please. He needed no further reassurance before to begin to bump in and out of you at a steady pace. This was maddening. You grabbed at the sheets and at his shoulders, clinging to his back as he gradually gained speed. You could hear his grunts in your ears with every thrust. You dug your nails into his back and you could feel the pleasure building as he filled you, hitting that heavenly spot he had found earlier. You moaned, you screamed his name. It was oh so delightful. It was wonderful. He nuddled his face into your neck as his pelvis moved continuously, and you filled his senses until everything that had been built up in that evening exploded. You felt your peak arriving, this tingling rush that when he released himself into you, panting desperately trying to catch your breath as he collapsed into the bed. He laughed low into your ear, slowly pulled himself away. He was dripping out of you. You looked down and raised a brow. Ha! What a mess. Link lied down next to you and rested his hand on your stomach. Trust me, it's going to get a hell of a lot messier from here.
Okay, so yeah, chapter.
Chapter 2. In the barn.
Okay, you know what? Never mind. Just fucking read.
You groaned, squinting at the sunlight that seeped into your cramped bedroom. Surprisingly, you woke up that morning and found your younger brother wasn't in his bed. He told you he'd be leaving the house early today because he's meeting up with some of the village children, but you didn't expect him to be out and about before you got up. He had trouble making friends back in Castletown. You smiled at the thought of him finally finding his place here in Ordon. Moving out here turned out to be one of the best decisions you'd made for your family since your mother's passing. You'd learned long ago that every single thing in life came with its own set of pros and cons. At the time, there was a gray area whenever you just tried to justify the move. The gray area was on its way to see you at that very morning. You'd been living in the village for only a couple months. Ordon was quiet, and days were relatively uneventful for its residents. So everyone still pegged you and your brother as new blood. You didn't see there was immediate need for a steady job at the time. There was no worrying about the rent every 3 weeks. It wasn't really difficult at all to come by the necessities for such a small village. For the moment, due to the lack of any real opportunities to join the Ordonian workforce, you found yourself picking up a variety of jobs for the other villages by request. These jobs range from babysitting for Uli to making deliveries for Sarah. There was a knock at your door and you knew exactly who it was. You hesitated since your encounter with Link. You felt somewhat ashamed. It had nothing to do with him per se. You were just scared he'd think you were easy. You tried your best to avoid him. Unfortunately for you, today's job involved helping out him on the ranch with Mr. Gray area. Are you awake? You heard from behind the door. You hadn't realized you were simply stalling the inevitable. You swiftly opened the door and here he was, the great hero of Hyrule. Truthfully, you had a difficult time seeing that in him. The stories you'd heard almost made him sound fictional. Link looked at you with a raised brow. Are you ready to go? You shook your head. Sorry, I just woke up. Come and make yourself some tea while I get ready. He nodded and entered the cabin while you ducked into the bedroom, hurriedly changing into your work clothes. From the kitchen you could hear him search through the cupboards. There was a certain degree of awkwardness that hung in silence between you two. Link got the feeling that you've been avoiding him lately, and he pondered while he waited for you in the kitchen with his tea. He was certain that if anything made you uneasy around him, it would be that what the two of you had done that one night. He took a sip. He didn't mean any harm. He just made sure that you wanted it. What was wrong? You sauntered out of the bedroom and waited for him to shallow down with the rest of his tea so you could get started on whatever it was that Fado needed you to do. After setting the cup on the kitchen sink, Link followed you out of the house. The two of you almost walked into some sort of uncomfortable silence. He decided to break it. Hey. Was your casual reply, keeping yourself forward a few steps away. You could see him from your peripheral vision. I'm sensing some tension here. What's wrong? The question made you turn your head, but you carried on walking, unsure of how to deal with the situation. You breathed in. Oh, I'm sorry, I just have a lot on my mind. He looked at you with a puzzled expression on his face, but decided against prying you for answers if you didn't want to talk about it. The two of you were nearing your destination, you hadn't noticed. But you were a few feet away from Link by the time you reached the edge of the ranch. You must have been walking irregularly fast. You did that sometimes when you were nervous. Fado was already heading the barn. His arms folded over his chest, his eyes were closed as though he were deep in thought. But they snapped open when Link approached him. You could hear him instructing Link to herd the goats out of the barn into the clearing so they could get some sunlight and graze. Link nodded and gestured towards you before heading inside to deal with the livestock. You approached Fado and smiled. Good morning, Fado. What's my job today? Morning. Link left the barn door open and Fado peered inside momentarily before turning back to address your question. After Link gets the ladies out, I want you to clear the barn. When you're done with that, you can help him milk them. He'll show you what to do. You nodded, standing by the door. Link had gotten a handful of goats out into the grazing field by then. Fiddle walked over to the entrance from which you came and waved an arm. Alright, I'll be leaving. To take care of business, you kids handle the ranch. You beamed at him and returned his gesture. Good luck, Fido. Link was already standing inside the clearing with the goats. He locked the gate that helped fence them in and began his routine inspection. You took this opportunity to head into the barn and get your work started. Since the only light came from the two windows and the double doors themselves, you pushed them further apart. You surveyed the perimeter until your eyes landed on a utility closet in the corner. You made your way towards it carefully as to avoid stepping on goat droppings. There wasn't a lot. Thank the goddess. You decided that would be the first thing you clean up. You were already dealing with the hay that was everywhere when you heard footsteps behind you. You didn't turn around to see him, knowing it must have been Link. He must have needed something from the barn, like the milking stool or some pills. You felt a pair of hands on your hips and you shot up in surprise. You were bent over a haystack. Link kissed the back of your neck and laughed softly into your skin. You turned your head to the side and furrowed your eyebrows. What do you think you're doing? Taking a break, he answered, pulling you closer to him. I missed you. Why does it feel like you're not happy to see me? It's because I'm not, you told him, pulling his hands away from you. Sorry. Your reaction stung him. He wasn't expecting the hostility. Link frowned. Was it something I did? If this is what about we did that night, I didn't mean any harm. Maybe I came off a bit too strong. You sighed. He sounded genuinely sincere, and you wondered why. You spun around his face to see him. He spun around to face him. No, it's not you. You didn't do anything. In fact, you were amazing. He cocked his head to the side. What's wrong? I guess... I just feel weird, you admitted. I mean, I barely even know you. You sure don't know a lot about me either. We did something really intimate and it just kind of feels strange because I see you around and I don't want you to think I'm too easy or something. Lake nodded in understanding that both you had agreed to keep whatever relationship you had low-key before you did anything. You didn't really mind that part in all honesty, but you were a fairly private person in the first place, and Link was just dying to have the experience without dealing with any socio-political messes. He looked into your eyes whenever whenever you saw them close up. It startled you how blue they were. You had to force yourself to concentrate to avoid being lost in them. He smiled. You mentally slapped yourself for heading off track just because of how beautiful he was. I don't think that. You forgot it was my first time doing that too. I know we don't know each other too well, but... He trailed off, inching closer to you. He held up a hand to your chin. I happen to really like you. I swear I want to know you better. If you'd let me. Your mind went blank. Your proximity was intoxicating, and before you knew it, you were kissing him again. You felt a rush search through your system when your lips came in contact with his. You felt him smile into the kiss. His hands were finding their way back to your hips. There's something so familiar present when you touched. You told yourself you didn't know the young man enough, but you couldn't explain why everything felt so seamless when you were together like this. He drew you closer by the hips. Your eyes darted open when you felt something familiar poking you down there. He bit down on your lower lip, but you pulled away from him. There is a bemused expression on your face. What do you think you're doing here, Al? Link smiled. Wanna do it? Gosh, your face felt hot. There must have been an ungodly amount of blood coursing to your face. Do it right here? He spun you around. You were bent over by the hay again, drawing small circles on your hips with his thumbs. He leaned down, kissed the back of your ear, making your hair on the end when he started down your neck. His voice was low and smooth. Right here. You swallowed. Fado could be back at any moment. Bo could drop by to check on you. A smile crept onto your lips as you grabbed his hands, leading them down to the hem of your skirt. Link, you're crazy. He grinned, pulling the fabric up to expose your bottom. He squeezed. You seem to like it. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe I am, you whispered in reply, placing your lips on his. One of his hands moved up to cup one of your breasts over your clothing. There's something exhilarating about the possibility of getting caught. And between that, his strong, muscular body pressed up against yours. You were really heating up. Link, I'm ready, hurry up. Link laughed. Easy. You pouted. We still have a lot of work to do. Fado might come back early. He slid his hands under your panties and pulled them down. You slid when he felt his hands on you. And then he leaned over to suck on your skin of your neck. He moved to undo the sash of his pants and quickly pushed them down. Link loomed over you and bent you over. You ready? Goddess, yes, Link, I am ready, you moaned. He had a tight grip on you and gasped as he entered you from behind. He grunted, biting down on the shoulder as he felt you adjust to him. He pulled himself out. The instant he did, you winced. Before you could complain, he thrust himself into you again. He began relatively slowly, but you were so tight. He was careful not to do anything too hard, as to avoid hurting you. But after a while, you wanted something more. Link, faster, harder. You felt his thrust get rougher. He moved to put his tongue in your mouth. You weren't exactly quiet. He liked it, but none of you wanted to risk drawing unwanted ears to the barn. You clutched at the haystack in front of you for support as he slammed in and he moved his hands down to touch you again, and you moaned into his mouth. You didn't have much experience, but you didn't need to know that he was doing such a good job. You were soaking the front of your skirt, and every time he penetrated you, there's a hot rush emanating from your core, sending chills all over your body. His mouth moved quickly from yours to your neck, leaving kisses and bite marks everywhere as he tasted you. At the last push in, you felt his member press against your sweet spot, and you moaned his name, begging for him to keep going. Link was certain he'd never get used to this. Joining with you made him feel incredible, and frankly, he found you so irresistible. Once he had that first taste, he'd never get enough. He panted, I'm getting close. You frankly grabbed at his arms and pushed your body back into him, forcing him deeper into you, pleading for him to go faster and rough as he could. He felt your body twitch, and he'd known that you were at your peak, your muscles contracting inside to let you know he'd reached your orgasm. When he felt your body relax under him, he took it as a sign to reach his climax as well. The familiar rush of a seed filling you coursed through. He leaned into you, kissing you one last time before he pulled away. Your knees were weak and you couldn't hold yourself up very well. Something he chuckled softly at when he pulled your underwear back on your skirt into place. He scooped you up into his capable arms and sat you down on the rectangular hay bale. You know, I wasn't kidding about wanting to know you better. Your eyes at him, but a smile graced your immaculate lips. Fine, but we've got a lot of work to do here, hero. Oh, dude, we gotta read all the chapters. Tyson just said to. I don't see a problem.
No. Shh.
We need to protect the biohazard container. Secure the room. Located the biohazard container.
So are you reading all the other chapters?
Sure, but you have to make them be quiet.
Them? Just mute them. That's what I did. I've already muted them. Why did you overclock me?
I muted you. I'm muting you guys now because you guys are being loud. Yeah, dude, there's 2 more chapters. Shut up. No, not tomorrow. Alright, Tyson.
Yeah.
I muted them. Do you want me to continue?
If you would like, you can.
They're complaining about how I should just do it other days.
I mean, you can if you want to. I'm not gonna say yes or no.
I'd rather just get it done now. Alright, tell me when to start.
Alright. Go ahead.
Chapter 4. Nowhere. It seemed as though Link meant what he said about wanting to get to know you. You saw him almost every day after you liked to call the barn incident. You'd often have dinner with you and your brother. Your brother told you that he liked having Link around so much and it gave him the feeling of having a complete family again. The implication didn't click with you at the time. You were just happy that they got along. Honestly, you liked having him around too. You liked it better when the two of you weren't around the house though. That usually meant you were up in his tree house at 3 o'clock in the morning making sweet, sweet love. Today Link was coming home from a few days staying at the castle town after having been summoned by the princess. He'd promised your brother before making his trip of his leave of Orden that the two of them would go for a trip to Lake Hylia upon his return. Your brother had been enthusiastic about it all week, thankfully. No one in the village raised their eyebrows to the sudden closeness between the hero and your family. You managed to keep your relationship under the rug. There were no serious feelings forming yet, not that you were aware of. And it wouldn't exactly be nice to hear Hylian housewives gossip about the hero of Hyrule shacked up with a random village girl every now and then. At the moment, you were perfectly fine with the secrecy of the delicious sex you've had occasionally. But therein lies a problem. It wasn't difficult to like Link. Let's face it. He was just a likable guy in general. This gave you much to think about whenever you had time to yourself. What if, just what if, he stopped being likable and started to be lovable? You weren't stupid. When you were younger, you believed that you'd lose your virginity to someone you were definitely in love with. You'd heard women talk about it was always difficult to remain attached to the man you lost your virginity to, and how it was almost impossible not to throw romantic feelings into the mix when you started sleeping with someone, even if both of you mutually agreed to remain platonic. Hell, you were probably already in love with him, maybe you just didn't want to admit it yet. Pack your things, Link's going to be here soon. You instructed your younger sibling entering the shared bedroom with a small bag you'd purchased from Sarah. He ran into the room almost bumping into you. I'm here. You giggled and handed him the rucksack. He took it from you excitedly and rummaged around the trunk of his belongings for whatever he wanted to take with him on the trip. You smiled. Don't forget to bring clean underwear. You watched his face get red. You laughed at this. There was no real need to be embarrassed. After all, you'd bought them for him. And you did the laundry and you changed the sheets, and when you wet his bed, he pursed his lips. I won't, jeez. What's going on here? You heard a familiar voice ask from the doorway. Your brother spun around and immediately tackled the source to the ground. You turn your attention to the pile of mails lying on the floor, snickered. Link's belongings lay scattered on the wooden floorboards, bottles, rupees, and wait, are those flowers? You leaned over with your hands on your knees and smirked at the blonde, while your brother went on about what he was going to bring on the trip. When he stopped talking, you pulled Link's green hat over his face. Oh, Link, you shouldn't have. Link scooped up. He made a farting sound with his lips, as if would ever get mad at you. She's only mad at me. Link looked over to you meaningfully, handing you the salvage bouquet. Oh, trust me. She gets mad at me all the time, but never for the reasons you think. Shut up, Link! Your face flushed red, and you returned to your mocking face with an incredulous look of your own. It was true, you got mad at him often. Why, just last night you got mad at him for teasing you way too much. Link let out a laugh and sat your brother down. He ruffled his hair. Well, we'll get you back to my house. If you need anything, we'll be in my house. Alright, bud? We'll leave in an hour or so. Alright, your brother beamed. Link glanced at you as he picked up his rupees that you had in your arms crossed by the doorway with the flowers in one of your fists. You didn't seem to hear him tell your brother he was taking you to his house. Link grabbed your waist and led you out of the house, mouthing a, "Let's go." Your brothers were furrowed and you puffed your cheeks, but when you let him lead you to the base of his treehouse, he climbed up to the ladder and extended his hand to you. You snorted. "Hey, what's the big deal?" He pondered your question and decided he didn't understand what you're getting at. "What do you mean?" You raised the bouquet to your face. "Flowers? Really? You're taking my brother on vacation, and the day you returned from your home and gorgeous Princess Zelda, you bring me flowers to take me to your bed?" Link chuckled. "What makes you think I'm taking you to my bed?" You rolled your eyes in exasperation. "All right. Where is it this time? The bathroom? Your kitchen?" He shook his head, but he was unable to contain his laughter. "As tempting as it sounds, no. Save those ideas for later, though." You sighed and took hold of his hand and as you made your way up to the ladder onto the platform. He unlocked the front door and allowed you to step inside before he did. Link's treehouse was bigger than the cabin you and your brother inhabited, and you'd learned from him that it was the house his father had grown up in. Because it was his housed family for such a long time, it was also cozier than yours. There were pictures lining the walls as well as things like fishing rod and a pitchfork you'd never seen him use. There's a newly hung photo of him and your brother near in the doorway, something that made a small smile present on your face. This did not go unnoticed. Link smiled and eagerly took a hold of your hand. "Come here, I want to show you something." "Link, if this is your sword again, I'm going to leave," you grumbled. He laughed at you. "Oh, don't pretend you didn't like it." "Totally," you replied sarcastically, and he was taking you to the upper floor of his house, where the bedroom was. You were about to comment on this, maybe to remind him that he'd said he wasn't going to take you to his bed, but decided against it when he stopped in front of the wall where the window was located. He faced you with a big goofy grin on his face. "Ready?" You folded your arms and raised a brow at him, smiling. "All right, hero, surprise me." Your eyes grew wide when he moved aside. Hung on the wall was a photo of you. You didn't know when it was taken, but you were outside in the sun and appeared to be laughing. You turned to him. "That's sweet, Link. Where'd you get it?" He shrugged his shoulders. "All you need to know is that I had it framed when I was in Castletown." You approached him and raised yourself by your toes, circling his neck with your arms. "I thought you didn't want to start anything with any women other than the princess to avoid gossip." You paused to press your lips against his briefly. "If you keep this up, I just might fall in love with you or something." "Oh," he began, a knowing smile on his face. "Zelda called me to the castle to attend the banquet she threw in honor of her recent engagement." "Oh, Link, you're a terrible fiancé. Leaving your beloved princess to linger in the arms of a simple village girl one last time," you teased. "Excuse you," he stated. The smile was still on his face. "I'm nobody's fiancé. Yet." You tilted your head to the side, and just what might you mean by that? "Let's not rush into things," Link snickered. "I wouldn't call you by simple village girl. I'd much rather call you my girlfriend."